In order to love her bodyguard Gu Qingyan, Shen Luo devoted all her love and her heavy heart. Give him food, dress him, marry him, and entrust him with the management of the Shen family business. The first thing her husband did when he climbed to a high position was to tear off his disguise, break her wings, and make it difficult for her to turn over forever. Finally, as he wished, she was tortured to death. Gu Qingyan, who was originally cold and ruthless, went completely insane, with crimson eyes and tears rolling down his face. He knelt down in front of her body and confessed. The cold and handsome CEO turned white all night and aged 10 years old. Chapter 1. Wings hard, dare to threaten me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the doctor's office. Ms. Shen Luo, your cancer cells have spread to the liver and are powerless to recover. Eat whatever you want and do whatever you want, don't leave any regrets. How long can I live? Suspended for a month. Shen Luo came out of the hospital and, feeling neither sad nor happy, took out her phone and called her husband Gu Qingyan. She thought that although they were not in love, it was necessary to tell him the fact that her life was not long. The phone rang a few times and was cut off. Call again, it's already on the blacklist. She chose to send WeChat, which was also blocked. The bitterness in the heart has worsened, and it is both sad and lamentable for couples to achieve this level. She didn't give up and went to the business hall to buy a new phone card and dialed Gu Qingyan's phone again. This time, he answered quickly, which one? It's me. Shen Luo held her phone, bit her lips, and the icy wind brushed against her face, piercing her bones like a knife. The man's voice on the phone suddenly became cold and impatient. In order to attract my attention, you even used the boring trick of changing the number card. Shen Luo, are you sick? This is what a husband said to his seriously ill wife. His eyes turned sour, and Shen Luo held the finger of his phone, which turned white. His nose was sore, and his eyes were instantly moist. Gu Qingyan, I have something to tell you when I go home tonight, he said. She thought it was necessary for her to tell him about her physical condition. Sign the divorce agreement and I'll be back. Before Shen Luo could finish speaking, she was impatiently interrupted by her husband. He spoke in a very irritable tone, as if they were not husband and wife, but enemies who were particularly envious when they met. Rolling his throat, Shen Luo thought to himself, if he knew now that she had advanced cancer, would he just speak a little better to her? Just about to speak. A delicate and gentle woman's coquettishness came out of Shen Luo's tightly held phone receiver. Qingyan, come quickly, the photographer who took wedding photos is urging again. Take wedding photos. They haven't divorced yet, and her husband can't wait to take wedding photos with her best friend. When she died. She is indeed a dying person, but her death was caused by the anger of this dog man and woman. The sinking tears surged out desperately. Anger, unwillingness, pain, and madness rolled down his throat, and Shen Luo forced back his tears, threatening, tonight at 12 o'clock, I want to see you. The wings are hard, dare you threaten me? The man sneered disdainfully from the receiver. There's no threat at all. It's reasonable for me to demand my husband to go home. Of course, you can also choose to kill the fish and break the net. But I will take Qing Xiaoxue as a backup. Shen Luo laughed back in anger. Shen Luo, don't regret it. The man threw down this sentence and coldly cut off the phone. Shen Luo walked on the street, tears that couldn't be held back instantly slipped from his eyes. It kept falling down my cheeks. The passers-by turned around to look at her like they were looking at a monster. Thinking of the past, Shen Luo couldn't help but collapse and cry. Gu Qingyan was originally an orphan who grew up deep in the mountains. Shen Luo's father, Shen Tianhua, saw that he was pitiful and brought him back to the Shen family to become her personal bodyguard. The Shen family spends money to support him in studying and becoming a good person, giving him the opportunity to enter the Shen group and enabling him to fulfill his aspirations. Even the only pearl in the Shen family's hand was left behind and married to him. After marriage, Shen Tianhua's body gradually aged and he also suffered from senile dementia, and the entire Shen family fell completely into the hands of Gu Qingyan. The first thing Gu Qingyan did for the Shen family was to propose a divorce. The conditions of the divorce agreement were extremely strict, and she had to leave the house alone. Perhaps it was due to her attachment to Gu Qingyan or her unwillingness to treat her well when a man suddenly turned against her. She endured a whole year of cold violence and refused to sign the divorce agreement. Before today, she had plenty of time to wait for him to turn around and see his attitude. But now, she has diagnosed advanced liver cancer with only 1 month of survival, and she must figure out the real reason for his upset. Go home. After washing my face with cold water, with a ding-dong sound, my phone rang. Take your phone, open it, and a photo pops up. It was sent by her best friend Qing Xiaoxue. A selfie of a hotel room, Qing Xiaoxue's eyebrows and eyes curved, provocatively looking at the camera, wrapped in a bathrobe, revealing her proud cleavage, whether intentionally or not. This is after taking the wedding photo and rolling the sheets. Luo, could you please tell me the size of your husband? He asked me to buy that, but I don't even know how big to buy it. Qing Xiaoshue's WeChat voice jumped out, and Shen Luo opened it slightly, hearing her playful and smiling question. Chapter 2. I'm dead, will you cry? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shen Luo stared at the photo with a sharp and calm gaze, as if trying to poke a hole in it. He is really blind and cannot distinguish people clearly. Gu Qingyan is her husband, and Qing Xiaoxue is her best friend. She used to say that someone would repay her, but she stabbed her back fiercely. It's been a long time since the mistress came to show off in front of the original wife, even though he was so straightforward and confident. Shen Luo is aloof, even if the Shen family falls into someone else's hands now, she is also the only miss of the Shen family. Qing Xiaoxue was just a small servant who used to flatter, apologize, and please behind her buttocks. Shen Luo regarding all communication methods of Qing Xiaoxue. Because she knows that flies don't bite seamless eggs. And Gu Qingyan is the egg full of warehouse barbarians. In order to wait for Gu Qingyan, she didn't have dinner and only took the painkillers prescribed by the doctor. The clock on the wall points to 11 o'clock. Shen Luo called Gu Qingyan again, using a new phone number, but he didn't answer. 12 o'clock sharp. With the sound of password input, the door is opened. Shen Luo was nestled on the sofa, holding a warm water cup in his hand, before he could even look up. Pop. 3 documents smashed into her face. The corner of the document flew past her eye, cutting through her fair skin. In the end, it fell at her feet, but she didn't feel any pain as she was rotten. Who can I show to if I'm dead or alive? Sign it. The man's voice is steady, his words are clear, but he carries disgust. She bent down and picked up 3 documents on the ground. Look up at him. Not seen for a year, he hasn't changed at all. Instead, his facial features are more handsome and his temperament is more noble. The previous year of cold violence had no impact on him. He is wearing a black coat. She once gave him a birthday gift, but it turned out that cold violence hasn't been thrown away for so long. Are you sick? What's wrong with you? I only have 5 minutes, hurry up and sign. He furrowed his handsome eyebrows, impatiently urging her, and even took off the pen from his suit pocket and stood in front of her. Divorce is so urgent, with only 5 minutes left for her. Shen Luo looked at him for a moment and said, Gu Qingyan, you betrayed me. Tell me the reason for betraying the Shen family. Your father is going to die, and you still look aloof. Gu Qingyan sneered and curled his lips disdainfully. Without me, without the Shen family, there wouldn't be you today. Shen Luo realized that this man was a mystery, contradictory to himself. Since you don't care about her, why wear the black coat she bought? Since I care about her, why did I resort to cold violence for a year, force her to divorce, and speak coldly to her? She doesn't understand. He walked up to her as if provoked and grabbed her neck, saying, "Who gave you the courage to talk to me like this?" She saw the overwhelming hatred in his eyes and wanted to tear her apart. Her cheeks turned pale, and although it was very painful, she still forced the tears in her eyes back and mocked, "An orphan, I personally fed him into a white-eyed wolf. No one is born an orphan. He had bulging veins." This sentence was so informative that Shen Luo even forgot that she couldn't breathe well. "So how did your family die?" Gu Qingyan's face was cold and heavy, and the blue veins on the back of his hand were clearly protruding. "Shut up." She kept coughing and struggling, but couldn't shake off the big hand around her neck. People always like to compete with fate. It is only after realizing that it is of no use that they understand that they cannot compete with fate. Desperately closing his eyes, giving up struggling, tears welled up in his eyes and landed on the man's big hand wearing an expensive watch. My body was suddenly pushed and I collapsed on the sofa. The divorce agreement was smashed on her face again and she said, "Sign it, I don't want to say it again." "Gu Qingyan, if one day you find out that you have lost me forever and I am dead, will you cry?" She looked up and asked him extremely seriously. This answer is very important to her, very important. Shen Luo paused and stared at his facial features for a moment. "Will you appear at my funeral?" Chapter 3. There will always be times when you cry, kneel, and beg for a divorce. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I will set off fireworks for a few days and nights at your funeral. Wishing you an early ascent to paradise. Wishing her an early ascent to paradise. Shen Luo's originally suspended heart instantly fell to the ground, shattering into pieces, each with blood, unable to bond together. If you want to talk about cold-blooded, you have to be Gu Qingyan. Her life and death, as he spoke, were so light and playful. "Gu Qingyan, if you want to marry her, let's wait until I die." She couldn't swallow the shameless prying away of a man who had been nurtured by her own hands. "If you are destined to suffer, then let the three of you be together. Shen Luo, there will always be times when you cry, kneel down, and beg me for a divorce." Gu Qingyan's sharp eyes were filled with coldness, and then he slammed the door without any suspense. She didn't sleep all night, not because she didn't want to sleep, but because she couldn't sleep at all. In his mind were the bits and pieces of her and Gu Qingyan, but in fact, when they first met, he never looked at her directly. In his eyes, she was just a delicate young lady who could reincarnate. The less he pays attention, the stronger her desire to conquer. She presented everything she could give him, including reputation, power, money, and her heavy heart, strong and irresistible, to him. Finally, he was moved. Shen's mother thinks he is a phoenix man and has other intentions. Gu Qingyan confidently assured her that he would be good to her for the rest of his life. People are always naive and unguarded about their first love. In order to marry their beloved man, they argue with their mother, run away from home, and go on a hunger strike. Shen Tianhua truly loved her. On her first day of hunger strike, she strongly agreed to the marriage and even convinced his wife. At the wedding, she smiled brightly and warmly. Compared to Gu Qingyan's calm demeanor, she was more like a victorious female general returning from a battle, with a strong and spirited demeanor. Thinking of the past, her heart was so painful that it was difficult for her to breathe. It was only after many years that she realized that the old man knew people accurately. My tired eyes sank outside the window, watching the sky gradually turn white from oppressive darkness. On the night of getting married, he answered the phone and hurriedly left, and she did the same from dark until dawn. She didn't know if he had gone to accompany Qing Xiaoxua that night. The phone suddenly rings. I pressed the answer button, placed it in my ear, but haven't spoken yet. Shen's mother's mournful cries pierced her eardrums and said, "Luo Luo, your father just had a car accident, and the perpetrator ran away. Come back quickly." She was struck by lightning, and her father had a car accident. He has senile dementia, lying in a wheelchair. how could he have had a car accident? Luo Luo, did you hear me? There's not even a servant at home, and I can't carry your father. I can't take a taxi, and your father has shed a lot of blood. Shen's mother didn't hear her daughter's response, and her crying voice was filled with anxiety and helplessness. Mom, don't worry, I'll be right back. Shen Luo didn't care about divorce, so he waved at the roadside, took a taxi, and returned to the Shen family villa. On the road not far from the villa, the wheelchair rolled on one side. Shen Mu, wearing a qipao and a woolen vest, held her husband Shen Tianhua, covered in blood, in her arms. Shen's mother cried into tears, her qipao covered in blood. The drivers and servants at home were completely disbanded by Gu Qingyan. My mother didn't know how to drive, so Shen Luo followed her mother to lift my father into the car and drove straight to the hospital. At the hospital, Shen Tianhua was pushed onto a stretcher and a group of medical staff anxiously pushed him into the operating room. As a family member, Shen's mother signed the surgical risk notice, and the nurse asked them to pay the fee first. Once the fee is paid, the surgery will be performed immediately. Shen Luo took her bank card and went to the outpatient hall to pay the fee. When she was told that she needed 5 million yuan for medical expenses, her eyelids twitched. All the money on her body adds up to 1 million. The medical staff, who may have paid for it, noticed her embarrassment and rolled their eyes impatiently, saying, I'm telling you, are you paying or not? The people behind you are all waiting in line for you. If you pay, take out your card. If you don't pay, don't occupy the way. Chapter 4. Carrying it back and waiting for death is not more cost-effective. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Can we pay in installments? Shen Luo gritted his head. The staff at the payment window didn't buy it, with a cold expression on their face as if they had seen too many people. We are a private hospital, so we can't charge on credit. Why don't you transfer to another hospital or go and collect the money quickly? I said, do you pay or not? If you don't pay, don't stand still. We're all waiting. That's right, occupying the pit and not defecating. The crowd queuing behind them rolled their eyes and complained, if you don't have money, what hospital would you come to? It's more cost-effective to carry them back and wait for death. Shen Luo lifted his eyelids lightly and apologized, making way for the payment position. She has very few friends, so borrowing money is unrealistic. The only one who can help her is Gu Qingyan. I called, but he didn't answer. She sent a message. It's very important, please answer the phone with Mr. Gu. This is the first time she has called him Mr. Gu. The first call was missed. The second and third ones still haven't been answered. The phone was almost smoking, and her heart was already shattered. She still made the call without giving up. Hit the 30th one. The other party suddenly answered, and the first sentence pierced her heart. Are you going to die? She was stunned for half a second. How did he know she was going to die? Did he investigate? He still cares about her. Why did Mr. Gu say this? Shen Luo suppressed his joy in his heart. The voice on the phone gave a cool smile and said, You're so angry when you talk. It seems like you're still alive. When you really need someone to collect the body, call me back. Joy was extinguished as soon as it sprouted, but now is not the time to dwell on these trivial matters. Mr. Gu, lend me 5 million yuan. My dad had a car accident and urgently needs money. Are all the lies about your father's car accident to delay the divorce? Mr. Gu can check. I'm not that idle. This should be the present life report that God gave you, you're just dragging your face and not getting divorced. The man's cold and contemptuous voice, like a knife, fiercely pierced the sinking heart. The phone was suddenly hung up. Outside the operating room, Shen Luo walked with a straight and thin spine, lost in thought. Shen's mother quickly ran over and asked, Have you paid the money? Shen Luo looked at his father lying on the stretcher bed, with an old face and graying hair dyed red with blood. She watched her father cry, and his father also watched her cry. What's going on? Are you talking? I'll figure out a way to deal with the money. I don't have enough money to find your husband. Where did Gu Qingyan go? Shen Luo was taken aback for a moment, then forced to ask. Shen Luo pursed her lips. Although Gu Qingyan had hurt her so much, if she wanted to get money from Gu Qingyan, she couldn't stand still and said, "He's busy." Obviously, Shen's mother didn't buy it. Her face turned pale with anger, and she snorted coldly a few times, "Your husband, your style is getting bigger and bigger." Shen's mother took out her phone and personally called Gu Qingyan, apologizing and saying, "Qingyan, are you busy with work? What's up?" The man on the phone was lazy and perfunctory. The smile on Shen's mother's face stiffened for a moment, but she pretended to be foolish for her husband's medical expenses and said, "When I was pushing your father for a walk today, he was hit by a big truck, which was quite serious. Do you want to take a look when you have time? I am an orphan, how could I have a father?" The man's voice was mocked with a faint smile. Shen's mother suppressed her prejudice for so many years, and her anger erupted completely. "Gu Qingyan, what do you mean by this? Isn't your father .in.law your father? He had a car accident, shouldn't you show up? Our Shen family provides you with food, housing, and education, has made you look like a person, and even married our precious daughter to you. Are you willing to repay us like this? You still want to divorce my daughter, and you have lost all conscience. I have something else to do, I'm hanging up." A light and ethereal sentence, the phone was hung up. Shen's words were like a punch to cotton. Shen Luo didn't expect that Gu Qingyan wouldn't even give face to her mother. Shen's mother trembled with anger and cried, wiping her tears with her hands. She was about to speak up to comfort when she received a firm slap from her mother. That slap made her dizzy and unable to see around clearly. Chapter 5. The warm blood in his palm imprinted on her face. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shen Luo's ears buzzed, and her eyes blurred for a moment. Before she could react, a cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Shen's mother didn't calm down yet and slapped her again. Shen Luo almost fell, and a kind-hearted nurse quickly helped her. Her eyes gradually regained their brightness, and she saw her mother glaring at her in anger and shouting. "You rebellious girl! You insist on doing what you don't want to do. What did I tell you back then? Gu Qingyan is not good enough for you, and he approached you with a purpose. The man I selected for you, a man from the same family, you don't want it. You insist on being an orphan and a bodyguard. Now it's okay, how does he treat you? How does he treat us? The good family business of the Shen family is all because of you, destroyed in your hands." Shen's mother couldn't help but feel angry, blushing and slapping, but was stopped by medical staff. Shen Luo covered his painful face, opened his mouth, and found that he couldn't utter a word. She can't do anything except shed tears of regret. The stretcher truck made a whimpering sound. Tianhua, what's wrong with you? What are you going to say?" Shen's mother screamed and leaned in front of her husband, trembling and crying. Shen Luo saw his father's tearful expression as he glanced at him and then at Shen's mother, shaking his head with difficulty. Shen Luo also approached him. He reached out trembling and helped her wipe away her tears. The warm blood in his palm, along with her tears, imprinted it on her cheeks. Shen Tianhua shook his head again, whimpering in his voice urgent. "Tianhua, I know what you mean. I was so angry that I slapped her. She is our only daughter, and I don't blame her." Shen's mother covered her lips, tears falling on her husband's face covered in blood, crying uncontrollably. "I just feel heartbroken that our precious pearl in the palm has been trampled on so badly. I feel heartbroken that our family business has been taken away by someone. Luo is my beloved treasure, and I can't even bear to hit or curse, now it's like this." Shen Tianhua had not yet entered the operating room, and Shen's mother cried and fainted first. Self-blame, regret, and guilt intertwined in Shen Luo's heart. The doctor was busy examining Shen's mother's body, but fortunately it was just excessive sadness. Shen Luo Sai gave the nurse a red envelope and asked her to help take care of her mother. The nurse received the red envelope and asked her to go and pay for Shen Tianhua's surgery with peace of mind. She has a villa under her name, which is her wedding home with Gu Qingyan. It's worth 10 billion yuan, and now she's selling it at a low price of 1 billion yuan. Contacting the real estate agent, the agent smiled and patted his chest, saying, "Miss Shen, your house is in such a good location that you will definitely sell it soon." A full 4 hours passed. The price of the villa has dropped from 1 billion to 5 million, and no one has asked for a price. Shen Luo realized something was wrong, and Zhongjie hesitated and was forced to ask. Only then did he blush and tell the truth. "Miss Shen, it's impossible for anyone to buy your house." "What does it mean?" She had a bad premonition in her heart. He lowered his head and pursed his lips, stuttering as he spoke. "Your husband Gu Qingyan, Mr. Gu, has spoken up. Whoever dares to buy, it's just that we can't get along. If you really lack money, it's better to find him." This sentence is an axe, chiseling a hole in her heart. The last hope was also shattered. Hold on to the corner of the table and force yourself to calm down. There will be a way, there is no way out. The money-urging call came again, but it was only the nurse who called. "Miss Shen, your father is going to die, where is the money?" "He is your father, you serve dim sum. At night, if you don't get the money at night, you will lose your breath." Chapter 6. What chips do you have to negotiate terms with me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The nurse was speechless and roast. "If you don't plan on surgery, take the person away. What's going on in our hospital? It's taking up public resources." This nurse just received her red envelope in the front foot. When receiving the red envelope, I smiled and frowned. After only 4 hours, I turned my face and didn't recognize anyone. The world is cold, but that's all. But she didn't have time to blame anyone, no one would help strangers with no vested interests, and she understood this truth. She was afraid that her mother would be blinded and cold-stabbed, so she could only lie lightly. "It will arrive before tonight." "Really?" The nurse's tone became pleasantly surprised. "Wait for the money to arrive." Hanging up the phone, I called Gu Qingyan and wanted him to come home to discuss the divorce matter. Her only bargaining chip now is to negotiate divorce conditions with Gu Qingyan. It's ridiculous that the last straw that dragged down her marriage was just 5 million. She went to a print shop on the street, reprinted a divorce agreement, changed the divorce conditions, and then drove to the Shen Group. Gu Qingyan is a true workaholic. He doesn't enjoy socializing and usually works overtime at the company. She specifically picked the time to finish work, and the whole building was dark, except for the light in the CEO's office still on. Since arguing with Gu Qingyan, she has never been to the Shen family. The former Shen family group only had 2 floors, but under Gu Qingyan's leadership, it has expanded to a whole building. On the huge electronic screen of Shen's building, a huge photo is playing. The man in the photo is her husband. Having a slender figure, dressed in a high-end custom-made suit, sitting on a chair with legs crossed, expressionless in expression, sharp in gaze, exuding a superior demeanor. Indeed, people rely on their clothing, and horses rely on their saddles. When she first met Gu Qingyan, he was wearing a washed white shirt and eating the cheapest food. Who could have imagined that Gu Qingyan, who was insecure and introverted, would have a day of arrogance over others? Shen Luo has no time to hurt spring and autumn. The top priority is to find him and borrow money to save his father's life. Push open the door of the CEO's office. "You leave work first, don't worry about me." A man wearing a white shirt and a black vest, with a gentle tone. Shen Luo was stunned. It turned out that he had a better attitude towards his subordinates than towards her. The man looked up and saw her instantly, his face slightly changed. He squinted and sneered disdainfully, "I didn't move my seat until I was dying. You came to my door before you died. Gu Qingyan, give me 5 million. Shen Luo entered the house and put forward the conditions in a straightforward manner. The man's sudden visit to her does not mean anything. Just his gaze was like a knife, mocking her with a tone of mockery. Are you still worth 5 million? No one knew that Shen Luo appeared to be calm and indifferent, holding the hand of the divorce agreement behind his back, but trembling slightly. Because no one knows better than her that the handsome man in front of her is just a beast covered in human skin, a wolf with white eyes. She opened the divorce agreement and placed it on the desk in front of him, saying, "This is the divorce agreement I modified. What chips do you have to negotiate terms with me? Shen Luo, who gave you your confidence?" Gu Qingyan didn't even look at the divorce agreement, but instead looked up at her with contempt in his eyes. "Just because Mr. Gu likes my best friend Xing Xiaoxue, you want to marry her and give her a home." Gu Qingyan still couldn't breathe, his slender fingers caressing his chin. "I am most afraid of the sudden quietness of the air." The smile on Shen Luo's cheeks made her very tired. "Gu Qingyan, if it's only 5 million, you can get rid of me." He looked up at her and sneered, "So you care so much about that old thing Shen Tianhua? Gu Qingyan, you should maintain the minimum respect for your father. In law. We can discuss the divorce conditions again." Shen Luo clenched his fingers into fists, but reason told her not to get angry. At this critical moment, Gu Qingyan was her last hope. She remained calm and spoke softly. "As soon as this sentence is spoken." Gu Qingyan picked up the divorce agreement. With a loud crash, the divorce agreement was torn in half and thrown into the trash can. Chapter 7. I hope he dies more than anyone else. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Miss Shen, is this your attitude of seeking help? He turned off his computer coldly and stood up to leave, saying, "I don't want to get divorced now. Please go back." Shen Luo grabbed his wrist and softened his tone, saying, "Gu Qingyan, I really have no choice." She didn't cry, just bit her lip and begged him, "I'm willing to divorce, I'm not bothering you anymore, help." This is the first time Shen Luo has been so soft in front of him. But he still shook off her hand and said, "But I hope he dies more than anyone else. Gu Qingyan, you have a misunderstanding about him. He is your father. In law. Or, how can you help by stating your conditions?" Her voice, neither sad nor happy, became slightly trembling. He didn't turn back, with a light-colored coat on his arm bend. Dong! Upon hearing the sound, Gu Qingyan turned around. Shen Luo, such a proud young lady, knelt down in front of Shen Tianhua, holding his precious daughter in his palm. His eyes were filled with shock. He was with Xing Xiaoxue, and he forced her to divorce with cold and violent force. She never knelt down. Can this be explained as Shen Tianhua's position in her heart being more important than his husband? His first reaction was to help her up, but he remembered that she was the daughter of an enemy. He withdrew the foot he had stepped on and gave a cold smile, saying, "Shen Luo, you really don't want your face for Shen Tianhua. In front of human life, face is not valuable." Shen Luo really thinks so. She used to think that self-esteem and face were the pride of being a good person, but when her father had an accident and she couldn't afford it, she realized how childish she was when she asked for help from others. Gu Qingyan, with a gloomy face, walks to the French window. It started snowing outside at some unknown time. If I remember correctly, Shen Tianhua loves snow the most. If you want to kneel down to Shen's downstairs. He turned around and saw her stunned. Shen Luo thought she had heard wrong. She thought kneeling down here was enough. To be ruthless, it must be Gu Qingyan. It seems that old thing is not as important in your heart. Gu Qingyan shook his head and snorted coldly, turning around to leave. If I knelt down, would you have saved my dad? If you want to kneel, kneel, or roll. Where's all that nonsense? Gu Qingyan lost his patience completely, tugged at his tie with a restless expression, and turned to leave. As you wish, I kneel. Gu Qingyan's back trembled suddenly. The Miss Shen, who has always been the most proud, would kneel down in reverence for that old thing. He was shocked, surprised, and even more so with a sense of revenge. Shen Tianhua killed his entire family, so he let Shen Tianhua's precious daughter kneel in the snow to repent of their sins. Downstairs of Shen Group. A vast expanse of white snow. Shen Luo knelt in the snow, the cold wind blowing non-stop, snowflakes falling on her black curly hair, and she only wore a small fragrant thin coat, making her look pitiful and thin. Her back is very straight. His gaze is stubborn and resolute. A big red umbrella appeared on her head. She was a bit surprised not to feel the invasion of snowflakes. She really doesn't know, at this point in the Shen family, who else would help her hold an umbrella. Who else will protect her? Shen Luo thought for a long time, but never expected such a person to appear. She once had a best friend, but was instigated by Qing Xiaoxue to go her separate ways. Is it Gu Qingyan? He was just angry earlier, but in fact, he didn't want her to suffer a little bit and suffer a little bit. Thinking of this, Shen Luo lifted his eyes with joy. Chapter 8. Bed like a dead fish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Shen Luo saw the person standing in front of him clearly, his fingers clenched tightly, and a hint of self-deprecation flashed in his eyes. It turned out she was overthinking. How could it be Gu Qingyan? If Gu Qingyan couldn't bear to let her suffer, the Shen family wouldn't have become the land they are now. Shen Luo's heart was filled with panic as she looked up at Qing Xiaoxue in front of her. Qing Xiaoxue was once her best friend, but she was so disgusted. Qing Xiaoxue applied makeup and delicate makeup, dressed in a designer outfit and slender high heels. She covered her lips and chuckled lightly, "Oh, isn't this the proudest and most precious daughter of the Shen family? How could there be a day when she knelt down and begged for help? I remember, your husband divorced you with cold violence, and you haven't been so humble before, have you? Get lost." Shen Luo didn't even bother to look at her, just a word floated lightly. "Oh, you're going to become an abandoned woman. Are you still so proud?" "Shen Luo, what I can't see the most is your aloof demeanor, treating me like a green leaf. You have to watch helplessly. How did I seduce your husband? Your husband told me that you feel like a dead fish in bed and have no sensation at all. As a woman, you can't even keep your husband's body, you're really a failure." Qing Xiaoxue deliberately stimulated her, wanting to see her become furious. However, she didn't do as she wished and just spoke lightly, "Are you leaving on your own, or should I call my husband and ask him to pick you up?" "You. Wait for me, I want you to look good." Qing Xiaoxue punched the cotton and stomped her feet in anger. She gathered up the fur on her body and entered the Shen group, saying, "Help me find a group of media, move quickly. Let them come to the Shen group quickly." Shen Luo originally thought that this heavy snow would pass quickly. However, it gets bigger and bigger as it goes down. Making her kneel in the snow is undoubtedly humiliating her father, because her mother loves snow, so her father also loves his house and his daughter. Perhaps he hates himself, along with her family. Kneeling in pain and numbness. The cold snow, after melting, seeped into her bones through her black wide-legged pants. Click, click. With the sound of high heels stepping on the ground. She lifted her eyes. Qing Xiaoxue walked out of the Shen building, holding her husband's arm. When they were dating before, she wanted to hold his arm like this, but he would always refuse, especially in public places. She always thought that it was due to his personality. He was a man who wanted face and was too close to her, so he would be criticized for being soft-hearted. It turned out that she forcibly added drama to his brain. Anything she couldn't do, Qing Xiaoxue would be an exception. Shen Luo stared at him intently. They stood together, perfectly matched. Even more ironically, he walked with Qing Xiaoxue and was still wearing a dark green coat that he had given him. Qing Xiaoxue supported the huge umbrella and helped him block the wind and snow. Gu Qingyan also noticed the sinking in the snow. He thought she had left, but he didn't expect to kneel here. At this moment, 5 or 6 vans stopped at the entrance of the Shen family. The car door quickly opened, and countless reporters rushed towards Shen Luo carrying cameras. Shen Luo was surrounded by the media before he could react. Gu Qingyan. She shouted for help loudly, but was blown away by the sound of wind and snow. She was worried that Gu Qingyan might not hear her, and her voice increased a few more degrees. Gu Qingyan, help me. Gu Qingyan. Don't leave her alone surrounded by such media, expose her. Chapter 9. Cold Sweating in Pain. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Her fair palms were stepped on by countless boots and leather shoes. The pain made her shed tears and burst into cold sweat. But he left and turned around with Qing Xiaoxue, leaving her alone by the back door of the Shen family. It's ridiculous that she would think he would save herself. Originally, he only remembered Qing Xiaoxue, but he didn't remember his wife being surrounded by the media. The camera and microphone flashed wildly across her face, and she wanted to get up, but was pushed and pushed by the media and fell into the snow. The media's questions were very tricky, and the microphone almost got stuck in her mouth. Asking her questions was undoubtedly about her marital status with Gu Qingyan, and whether her father was already powerless to turn things around. Did she kneel here and do something wrong? Every question pokes at her heart. Very good, Gu Qingyan. You did a great job, trampling on the self-esteem that Shen once valued the most. What's even more ridiculous is that this farce was still live broadcast. There are countless people online watching Shen Luo being besieged. Suddenly, the alarm sounded. Several police officers arrived, evacuated the ordered the media to shut down the live broadcast, and deleted any footage taken. She didn't know who the kind-hearted person was, but suddenly took action to help her save her last face. The police saw her pitiful and offered to drive her home. The phone suddenly rang. The person who called this time is Shen's mother. Her face slightly changed, and she bowed to the police to express gratitude. She said she drove her own car, and the police even bought her an ointment to treat bruises and pains, insisting that she keep it. She took the ointment and wanted to transfer money to the police, but he didn't ask for it. Then he told her that if she had difficulty finding the police, it is now a rule of law society. She only answered the phone after the police left. Shen's mother complained on the phone, "How did you answer the phone? Don't you know time is very urgent? I just had something to do." Her knees were sore, afraid that her mother would worry, so she forced herself to speak loudly. "What about the money you raised? Why don't you talk? Alas, your father is getting more and more serious now, and the doctor has already issued a notice of critical illness. Serve dim sum. Mom, please, serve dim sum. To be honest with Mom, have you really found the money? In this situation, lying is not necessary, child." Shen's mother struggled to hold back her tears on the phone, but in the end, she couldn't help crying and said, "Speak up, I'm sorry." She can't say anything. Father has today, and the Shen family has today, both because of her. Tell your mother the truth, and if she can't stand the stimulation, will she faint again? She's not that cold-hearted. A lie requires countless lies to be fulfilled. Once you receive the money, it can only be received in half an hour at most. Really, fake. The storm will pass soon, let's hold on a little longer. I'm urging the money. Shen Luo hung up the phone, wiped away her tears, and called Gu Qingyan. She thought she was kneeling in the Shen family, surrounded by the media, and throwing away such a big person. There must be no problem. As a result, Gu Qingyan, this brute, just didn't answer the phone. Maybe he finds her annoying. When she made the third call, the other party has shut down. She just realized that she was being played with by Gu Qingyan. But she had no choice, she really had no choice. She took a taxi to his other properties and wanted to block people. Without exception, no one. Gu Qingyan seemed to have evaporated from the human world, but she couldn't find it. But she didn't have time to cry, so she went to the business hall and bought a phone card for 1,000 yuan. The salesperson looked at her like she was looking at a fool, but still happily sold it to her. She changed her card number and walked aimlessly in the cold wind, with heavy snow falling and captivating her gaze. Unconsciously, I walked to the edge of the frozen lake. She dialed his phone again with a new number card, and this time his phone turned on. Perhaps not knowing who made the call, Gu Qingyan answered quickly and a cold voice passed through the earpiece, reaching her eardrums. "Who is that?" His voice remained the same as before, neither sad nor happy, hoarse and magnetic. But now it sounds extremely harsh. "Gu Qingyan, did you find the media tonight?" Chapter 10. You should fulfill your promise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She held her phone and sat on the pier by the bridge, which was icy and piercing. So what? No, so what? He smiled nonchalantly. In this situation, he could still laugh, and the scum was to the extreme. However, it doesn't matter anymore. Gu Qingyan, I have been kneeling for 2 hours at the Shen Group building according to your instructions. So I'll give you an award. He retorted with ridicule. You should keep your promise and give me 5 million. She struggled to speak, and he pretended to be confused, so she could only shamelessly remind him time and time again. Miss Shen, when did I promise to save your father? Gu Qingyan. Shen Luo's fingers holding the phone turned pale. What I seem to be saying is, I hope he dies more than anyone else, right? You are foolish and insist on kneeling outside in the cold. It's your own tendency to be abused, who can be blamed? All the defenses in Shen Luo's heart were shattered. Holding her phone and crying bitterly, she couldn't maintain her loneliness, strong self-esteem, and pretended not to be hurt. He's not dead yet, but you started crying first. He's quite filial. I have an idea for you, 5 million for you, but I have conditions. Her crying suddenly came to an end. What conditions, you say? Didn't you say yesterday, do you want to die? Your father owes me a few lives, and if you help him die, I'll get the money right away. After all, you earned it. There are many benefits to your death, and we don't have to go back and forth to go through some divorce procedures. Your father can also receive better treatment, and you can die early and have an early reincarnation. You really deserve it. I will help you with your funeral, which is unparalleled in the world and will make women all over the world envy you. Don't you like pink? Choose pink flowers for your funeral, and use pink borders for your photo frame. Of course, I will also burn more paper money for you, set up fireworks for a few days and nights, and celebrate your early ascent to paradise. With a cool and indifferent tone, most of the words in a sentence are death, death, death. Her husband, how much he hates her, can only hope for her death and speak these despicable words. Her focus was only on how he wanted to make her funeral a success, without paying any attention. Her father owed Gu Qingyan a few lives. Yes, that old thing will eventually die, you don't deserve to take your own life. Seeing her remain silent, there was a hint of displeasure both inside and outside her words. She knew he was going to hang up. Gu Qingyan. The most regretful thing in my life is choosing the wrong person, choosing you as my husband, and choosing you as my personal bodyguard. It's because I'm blind, it's because I can't recognize people clearly, and it's the consequences I planted. I admit it. You better keep your promise. I'll die, I'll listen to you, and I'll die when I go back. If you don't give my dad money without conscience, I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost. I'll keep pestering you, making it difficult for you and Qing Xiaoxue to die." She collapsed and burst into tears. This is her first time losing control of her emotions in front of Gu Qingyan. She walked to the lake and stepped on it with her feet. The surface of the lake had already frozen, and she might not die if she jumped down. She would be choked to death by cold water, and her body would not know when it would be picked up. It would also swell, float, and look very ugly. She is a beauty lover. On the way home, she went to the small shop to buy a box of blades. It's still the sharpest type. She is afraid of not succeeding at once and repeatedly feels too uncomfortable. When she returned home, she filled the bathtub with a full tank of warm water and sprinkled it with rose petals, which she loved the most. The crimson and viscous liquid dripped and fell onto the surface of the bathtub covered in roses, as if silently telling the sorrows of the world. "I'm afraid Gu Qingyan won't know she's dead, which will delay the progress of making money." Shen Luo picked up his phone, wiped it, took a photo of his wrist bleeding, and sent it to his phone with a signal card. "As you wish, I'm dead and I'll transfer the money directly to my mother's account. Edit the information and send it." Information sinks into the ocean. She actually fantasized that he would reply to her message and tell her not to die. It's ridiculous, to the extreme. She's dead, they don't even need to go through the divorce procedures, how could he tell her not to die? The water in the bathtub was steaming hot, and was stained red by the blood. Doodle doodle. The phone on the sink kept shaking. My eyes suddenly lit up, was it Gu Qingyan calling?